Hello, everybody, and welcome to our ID verification panel discussion today. I'm Becca Dagg. I'm the Director of Customer Success and Support here at EngagedMD, and I'll be helping facilitate this discussion. We put together the panel today to educate our clients about our ID verification, or IDV, functionality and why we believe clinics should adopt it. Now, for those unfamiliar, ID verification is one of our enhanced security layers on e-sign forms that verifies that the signer's ID is legitimate and that their name matches the name on the consent form before allowing the signer to proceed with completing the form. It's a simple but effective way to help you prevent ID fraud at your clinic. A demo is provided in the attached materials. Now, EngagedMD's e-sign product has always operated with a secure email-based authentication layer that ensures that the right patient receives the right form. As a little bit of background, we saw as the need for secure authentication grew, so did our technology. As an additional layer, we added two-factor or SMS authentication. And more recently, we took security one step further with the ID verification that I just mentioned. In the past few years, we've seen that this quickly became the highest standard of security for authentication methods, especially during COVID-19, which, as you probably all recall, at that time, e-sign usage increased exponentially at clinics, as did the need for enhanced security because patients could no longer easily notarize forms or show up in person as easily to show ID. So ID verification, while it's been around for a little bit, we're here today to educate you on why it might be necessary for your clinic. And to help us do that, we've asked Dr. Stephen Katz of REI Protect and Dorsha Edward of Reproductive Specialists of the Carolinas about their experience with preventing identity fraud and using EngagedMD's ID verification. I encourage you to read their very impressive bios in the attached materials as well. All right, let's get into the questions today. Thank you, Dr. Katz. Thank you, Dorsha, so much for being part of our panel. Our first question is for both of you. Dr. Katz, I'm going to start with you, and we'd love to hear, can you share any examples of identity fraud attempts at the clinics that you work with?
Absolutely. I think identity verification is really extremely important in this day and age. We've had a handful of couples that have really tried to have consents used without the proper signature. A couple of examples. One female patient, whether they're married or not married, wanted to go ahead and use her frozen embryos and simply brought in a consent, of course, that was signed by herself rather than her partner. But it could have easily been her husband. Another example is a little bit more difficult to understand. A female patient who was engaged brought not her ex-fiance, but a friend who actually resembled her ex-fiance to sign his consent in person, of course, with the wrong name. That's an absolute scenario where in person you must check the driver's license or additional applicable verification. You can't just say, "Hi, John," or "Hi, Paul, good to see you," because clinics are busy and people do look alike. The latter case that I described is actually a claim because the clinic made the mistake, was too casual. The frozen embryo was used. It has created a baby. And so it just reiterates how important in general identification verification is, particularly as we look to EngagedMD to help us with online verification. Absolutely, ID verification is critically important.
Thank you for that example. I imagine the impact on the clinic is significant given the amount of time that is going into investigating this and working on the claim as well, in that latter example.
It was quite devastating because it the time, the energy, the resources, but the clinic staff questions, their years of experience and their years of patient contact. But it's a new age.
Yeah.
You have to verify who you're talking with.
Absolutely. For another example, Joshua, we'll turn to you. Do you have any examples at your clinic of identity fraud attempts?
I certainly do. What I want people to recognize is any patient going through REI, it's a daunting experience, especially for those in relationships. It can cause some stress on those relationships when a partner feels like they failed the other one because they're unable to get pregnant. We did have a situation where a couple essentially had a falling out, and the partner accessed the patient, the main primary patient's portal, and stated specifically in the portal, I'm not going through this process anymore. I'm pregnant. We're good to go. The patient themselves came into the office and said, hey, I've been calling, I haven't heard anything from anyone. What's going on? Come to find out, that's when we actually had the conversation with the patient to say, oh, our apologies. In the portal, you stated that you no longer wanted to move forward with this process. Patient then told us that wasn't me, that was my partner. There was a lot that kind of unfolded from there to that patient attempting to sign forms, falsifying the partner's information, and it took a turn. But the team was on top of it. There was a lot of communication. We ended up actually having to even change the phone number in the primary patient's chart, because it actually turned out that the number we had on file for the patient belonged to the partner.
Wow. Yeah, a significant amount of time and resources by the staff and, of course, the patients that come into play when these identity fraud attempts happen. So we know, unfortunately, that they're out there, that they happen. Thank you for sharing those stories, too. Doubling down into what I think we've been circling around a little bit, but what are the primary risks to a clinic that proper identity verification can help minimize? Dr. Katz, I'll go back to you on that one.
Well, a core value at any IVF program is that we're treating the right patient, that we're collecting the right gametes, that we're creating the right embryos. All of this starts with proper identification verification.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just important, it's central to the success of absolutely any medical practice, but certainly an IVF program.
And George, I'll ask you a version of that question. What are the primary risks to patients that are out there that proper identification for the patients could help mitigate?
Well, when we think about it, right, what we're always taught in healthcare is, do you have the right patient? Do you have the proper identifiers? When you're looking at surgery, do you have the proper anatomical part of the patient? Just making sure that you're following the steps needed to identify the correct patient. Mm-hmm. Do you have the right name? Do you have the right date of birth? Sometimes you even have to go as far as, what's the zip code for this patient to ensure that you have the right patient. We have educational modules that we provide to our staff to help them kind of understand what that process looks like. Because sometimes you have people who have been in healthcare for years, and then you may onboard an employee who maybe has worked in the hotel industry, and they're not used to having to follow certain policies and procedures.
Yeah, and so safeguarding the patients is so paramount, and I completely hear you. So much effort from a leadership perspective goes into training the staff so that they can then in turn protect the patients and make sure that they're being treated properly. Thank you for sharing that. Jorsha, my next question is also for you. So at your clinic, Reproductive Specialists of the Carolinas, you use ID verification on 99% of your forms. And for that 1%, you use SMS or that two-factor authentication. So I know you take the identity protection of your patients very seriously. But we'd love to hear, how did you get to this point? Tell us the story of how your clinic decided to use ID verification.
Oh, so we have our nursing team, right? We are a smaller practice. I do want to put that out there. So we don't have the manpower that some larger organizations have. So a good bit of our nurses' time was being utilized to have patients come on site and do consent signing in office. And of course, when they're doing that, they may end up having multiple questions. So it takes up a lot of the nursing time that they could be utilizing to assist other patients. And then it also came into time for patients. Patients value their time. We have patients who travel from Raleigh, North Carolina. We have patients that travel from Rock Hill. They're making that hour drive to sign the consent forms. By allowing them to actually use the ID verification process through EngagedMD, it saves them time. And that's something that has been extremely beneficial, not only for our staff, and to decrease hours used to do this, but it also gives patients some of the time back in their day.
I love that perspective, just really thinking about it from the patient and then also from the staff from an operational perspective too. Dr. Katz, I'll ask you that as well. For the clinics that you work with, any commonalities in the reasons where they decided to use IDV and how that came about for them?
Well, our program is by invitation only. And so, we have very high expectations for the clinics, and they have high expectations of what we provide. And so we have a set of core values, and they all surround safety. So ID verification has become a cornerstone of our program. We see so many risks surrounding the concept of not knowing who your patient is and not verifying who they are. So it's a cornerstone of our program. And, I'm really proud of EngagedMD for putting on this seminar and leading the way here because it's crucial. I don't think there's a single soul out there that would think ID verification is not critical.
Absolutely. We are thrilled to be partnering with fertility clinics and providing this. Providing the technology is sort of step one, and then implementing and preparing the staff is kind of step two. So would love to move into a little bit of how can leaders prepare their staff, prepare their clinics to best prevent ID fraud. So Jorsha, I'll start with you. What measures, it can be IDV, it can be another one, can be implemented to help prevent staff from inadvertently facilitating identity fraud?
One of the biggest things we do here at RSC is the educational module in HIPAA, which kind of goes over that information with regards to identity fraud. We also utilize a system where when patients come in for their first appointment, when they come in person, we take a snapshot, we take a photo of them, we ask them for their ID, we scan it into the EHR system. So those are other ways we can use to verify the patient is who they say they are. And in incidents like the one I had discussed earlier, when things like this happen, right, we create incident reports and we educate our teams that these incident reports aren't punitive. These incident reports are made so that we can work towards ensuring that things like this don't happen again, right? So when things like this happen, when something seems off, what's that red flag that pops off in your head that says, wait, let me pause a minute and let me do a little bit more further investigation?
Absolutely. There's a lot of nuance to this as we're dealing with humans. And so allowing the incident reports to help inform that, I think that's a great best practice. Dr. Katz, similar question. What are your recommended best practices for fertility clinics interested in safeguarding themselves against fraud?
Well, I actually think it starts at employee hire,
Hmm.
at the interview process. And I think one or two questions surrounding their view on the importance of identification verification. I would be surprised if any interviewing employee didn't take it seriously at the interview.
Yeah.
But I think there's a nuance in seeing what their reaction is. Are they wanting to talk about it? Does it seem like a silly question to them? I think at the employee hire interview, I think that's a critical piece of the interview. I also turn it around to the employees. Would you ever feel comfortable being treated in a doctor's office or a hospital if you didn't think they actually knew who you were? I think that answer is 100% no. So that's how I think the core foundation really starts at the practice. I mean, George is correct. Continuing education is vital. Continuing use of enhanced technology is vital. But it's much easier to teach an employee who understands the importance from the get-go.
I love that, starting with the foundation, and maybe we all have a few more interview questions to add to our repertoire now. Thanks for that. The next question is around ID verification on consent forms. I know, Jorsha, you all use it on all of your consent forms. So I'll ask Dr. Katz what insights or recommendations do you have regarding using ID verification on consent forms? What do you think is the standard there?
I think the standard's pretty simple. If you're not using it, start using it, because there's no reason not to use it. You save time, you save, money in terms of your staff's time, your practice's time, and anything you could possibly do to make your practice safer is the right thing to do.
Thank you for that. We will wrap up with our last question. Thank you so much so far for this conversation too, and your insights. Jorsha, we'd love to end this with getting a little bit of your advice. What advice would you share with clinics that have not yet started to use IDV? What would you share with them?
I'm going to say exactly what Dr. Katz said. If you are not using it, use it. Start now. Unfortunately, we do live in a day and age where AI has kind of taken over the world, and you constantly have to verify that you're not a robot when you're logging onto a platform. So if you're not, do it. The more we educate our patients, the more they understand. Dr. Katz gave a perfect example. Ask your employees, if you were to go to a doctor's office and they didn't know who you were, would you want them to take care of you? And if we educate our patients and let them know, because half of the time they're thinking, oh, this is too much. But give them that perspective that Dr. Katz gave. And I do want to end by saying this, Dr. Katz, as a practice administrator, thank you for that advice, right? During interviews, we give behavioral questions, all types of questions, but I would have never thought to ask a candidate, what do you feel about privacy? What does that mean to you? What does that look like and its importance? So thank you.
And we'll wrap up, Dr. Katz. Same question to you. Any last words of advice for clinics who are not yet using IDV?
The world gets riskier every day, sadly. And the IVF practice, because procedures are so much more commonplace now than they ever were before. In order to protect your patients and yourselves, you've got to start with a core understanding of who your patients are, each and every time. And that's the central theme of ID verification. So I urge you, please, if you're not using it now, start using it the moment after you leave this webinar.
Fabulous. Well, on behalf of EngagedMD, thank you both very much for participating and giving your advice and your stories and your wisdom on this topic. We very much appreciate your time. And this now concludes our ID verification panel session.
Thank you.
Thank you.